We see, I'm keeping them true to form, keeping them guessing. 2 minutes over. You know, we surprised everybody on Tuesday because we were 2 minutes earlier, and they were just like, "What?"
Oh, the cats always come late.
Yeah, that's right. You know, you can't come anything but late to the party. So, hi guys, those who are joining us for Feline Fridays. Oh, and Amaya's decided to leave already. You know, she says, no, I truly want to come in late. So
gonna make an entrance, isn't she?
She is. She says, I'm dropping out and dropping in. She says, she just told me just before we came live, I heard the traffic noise, and obviously in Madrid, there's loads of traffic outside. He says, don't worry, you'll hear the police sirens soon. It's fine.
Oh my goodness.
So I hope her internet hasn't overheated with actually going online in Madrid. She's back. You see, we had this last time. I'm sure that you were all dropping in and out. And we were,
okay.
So that's fine. As soon as she's back on camera, had a power cut by the looks of it. Waiting for some of the guys to join us. Yeah, she's getting there. She's there. She's there. You ready? 1, 2, 3. She's coming on. We just thought,
Here we
decided
go.
I turned it on. What's going on? Everything
you
is
do
perfect.
this every week.
Yeah.
2 for 2 now.
I didn't do anything this time. I don't know. Anyway.
Hi.
Let's hope
see, come on, guys. If you want to say hello, just pop a note in the little notes box and just say hi. Hi, Heidi. It's nice to see you joining us. And yeah, this week we're all talking about feed transitions and how to get our kitty cats onto raw, particularly some of the tricks of the trade, some of the issues, some of the reasons why they may not want to come across, and hopefully we'll put some of those reasons to bed here today. Thanks again for Julianne and for Amaya joining us today, cat experts extraordinaires, and hopefully if you've got any questions, pop them up in the chat and we'll deal with those. So things of the week. Come on, what's happened this month? You've had a month, actually, not a week. I'm always saying week. Yeah, what's your news of the month?
It's a holiday month here in Spain. Nothing happens on August. It's kind of, you know, if you need to do something important, just remember August is not the month.
Okay, so is it just too hot? Is that the reason, or is it just everybody goes, it's summer, we're off holidays?
No, well, usually it is the summer holidays, but still, I think it is the weather, because it was awful this year. Well, I heard in the UK was as awful as well, for what you're used to.
Yeah, we had it in the 30s.
Yeah, it saved so many people buying airfares because they could just stay at home. It was
yeah, I have to say though, it did affect the boys. So Leo and Max, with the weather, they weren't eating as much. You know, even when we tried to do what Brendan said last time, which is feed at dawn and dusk, they weren't having it. They were picky with their food. They'd eat one, protein one day and then not the next meal. They were really like off it, and I had to kind of just catch my breath and cool my anxiety down, because I'm like, oh my god, they're not eating, what's going on, but it was so I think the hot weather can affect us all, like humans and cats, definitely.
Well, for example, in my case, my cats didn't want to eat any lamb. Actually, I always buy the same proteins, because you're used to just make the same I shop the same meats every time, and I was like, okay, now I have lamb and nobody wants it. For September maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, it's one of those, isn't it? We start to go into other forms of medicine and whether they're heating meats or cooling meats, and here we go. No, we're not going to go there just today.
No.
But look, guys, it just shows for all of those guys that are watching, even for the guys that know their cats inside out, they still get anxious about when a cat doesn't eat. So we're with you. We understand. That this is a real concern for all of those guys out there. So let's just see whether we can give you some tricks to keep them eating, and also things to reduce your anxiety. So who wants to pick up first? Julianne, go on. Let's. You haven't given us your news of the month yet. What else you've been having other than Leo and Co not wanting to eat?
So pretty much Max has decided that he is an avid hunter. So we've been getting little gifts. I came home yesterday. There was a lovely blade of grass by the door. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. He's almost brought me flowers. And then I looked to the side and there was a nice dead mouse there on the mat for me. I've just come home now and there's a nice dead vole. So, it's obviously gift month for mummy. It's tough because I wrestle with the, nature, nurture, you killed an animal, etc. I've got carnivores as pets. That's my choice. That's his, his innate drive. I just wish he'd eat them. I really wish he'd eat them because I'm like, buddy, that's fine. Like the whole circle of life, Pumba, it's fine, but eat it or at least eat part of it. It's just a whole. I mean, I don't want to see like a dead mouse head. Don't get me wrong, but still, I'd be like, yes, he's eaten some, and he doesn't. It's just,
it's
not a wasted life. Yeah. That's what you want. Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly it. But yeah, it's he's definitely becoming so much more confident with it, which is beautiful to see because with him being outside, him and Leo are starting to sort of have a few more tussles in the house, but when they're outside, it's great to see that Max is able to be himself, And
do you know what? This was a really interesting point on Tuesday. It was raised in the national media about there's certain areas, I think in South Africa, that they've actually banned cats from being let outdoors. In fact, actually, you can get fined an enormous amount of money because there's like 6 breeding pairs of a certain bird. And if they're caught with that bird in their mouth, that's it. You get slammed with 5,000 rand fine or something. And there was then a whole conversation about, should we be keeping our cats on leads? Should we be keeping them indoors? There's a whole conversation there, isn't there, about what's natural, what's appropriate. Are we overpopulating our urban areas with cats and therefore decimating the wildlife? Actually, what are the welfare indications or implications of keeping them in that side of things? Your cats, Amaya, are you keeping your cats indoors in Madrid, or are they?
Yes, I cannot have my cats outside. There's too much traffic. I live really near to the train station, so it is impossible. I could take them outside on a leash, but one of my cats suffers hyperesthesia, so he doesn't like anything on his body. And the other one, the other one is deaf, so she wouldn't care. But I don't know. I feel it's unfair in a way.
That could be like sensory overload for her nose, though. If she can't hear, like her other senses are obviously going to be heightened, so it could be overload.
Yeah, but no, I don't. I think she's like very relaxed and she's never worried about anything. She likes to, even when I do self-selection with her, she's like so peaceful. Like, okay, let's see what's, okay, yeah, okay. So she takes everything. Her life is like that. So I don't know. Probably she would be very good outside, but I don't like it. I'm trying to move out from Madrid and see. I look for better places so they don't have this contamination air and the traffic and the noises and everything. So, but it will come as in a moment. And what you said about cats going outside, there's a paper that actually points nutrition into this thing. It says that if you feed your cats appropriate food and you play, and you don't have to play a lot, but if you just play and you have a good routine, actually their hunting reduces a lot from cats that don't eat appropriate food. So I think we need to figure it out a way for them to go outside. That's like my point of view, but not in a
Yeah. Although all for my mouse catcher, because I mean I can't imagine how many mice she'd catch if she wasn't on raw food in that case. But you know, from a point of view of, you know, she's out there predating stuff.
Yes,
She's
of
trained
course.
my youngest dog to predate and go out and eat rats. You know, it's great. It's just like
It is
saves
good
me a
for you,
fortune.
though.
True Yorkshireman. You know, free food. I've never turned down free food.
No.
So from that side of things, you want them to take that side out, but
Yeah.
not necessarily all of the wonderful
All
little
the
birds
fountain,
and
yes.
things like that. Yeah, it's all
Exactly.
gets a little bit. You know, that's all of this. What do you think of putting bells on their collars to scare the birds off? Have you done that?
No bells. I don't like bells. They can be very confusing and actually can be very how do you say, like, it could bother them a lot, the noise and the
overwhelming. Yeah.
Yes, overwhelming. That's the word I was looking for. And then there was a Chilean brand that actually did certain colors that were kind of like those colors that you use for surgery or whatever, but shorter. And they have like very bright colors, and they were really soft. And so the birds would also, the birds also escaped from that, because the cat, once the cat was running, those lights were moving, and that seemed to be very. Was working very good in Chile, but I don't know what happened to the brand. I was trying to look for them to see if they could sell and try them, and that is a good idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, really interestingly, there is an electronic collar which is designed that they can predate mice, they can do all of that, but if they do a certain movement when they are predating birds, that's supposed to be different. So the hunting technique, the pre-launch and then the launch to catch, is slightly different, and the collar recognizes it and emits a high-pitched noise if they launch for birds, but not if they're hunting mice. And all sounds brilliant, doesn't it? And then you're thinking, yeah, the high pitch, you might not hear it, but will your cat? It's like those training collars to not do it. And so anyway, my cats don't have collars on at all. So and sorry, Penny, I know, Penny, you're asking for where's Nick. No, it's just us three today. Nick's not a cat person really, so he's not going to be online with us.
I have to say, like, the collar situation, like, ours have got collars on because Leo's asthmatic, so he's got a little stainless steel engraved pendant that says his name, my phone number, and that he's asthmatic, and he's got clip release collars. When they get delivered, we take the bells off because I don't like the bell all the time, and to be honest with you, I don't think it's good for them. And we tried a GPS tracker collar on him once, and when he came home, he was a completely different cat. He was agitated, he was irritated, he was frustrated, his eyes, his brow was furrowed, and I'm like, imagine having electronics around you. We choose to have watches or whatever, electronics we're around, but for him, like, it wasn't a good thing. So like that one with you're saying about Brendan, that would be hell. I wouldn't want to try anything like that. I mean,
no, me neither.
You don't see it everywhere, and I don't think it's that popular a brand. Otherwise, they'd be, really eulogizing about it, wouldn't it, to save the bird population of Britain? But, it is what it is. Anyway, let's crack on. Yeah, so that's really what we're here for today. You're going to have one top tip. We'll work it down, and then we'll try and work out who's got the top 10. So, Julianne, you go first. What is your top tip for transition?
So my top tip would be realistic expectations.
That's a good one.
I know we're not starting off with like, try this meat, try this protein, do this plate, put it here. I know all that, but so many people comment and speak and message me and everything and say, I've tried for a week, I've tried for a month. I'm like, okay, well, it took me 6 months. And we've been on raw for 5 months, and we still have setbacks where we go to a bit of wet and occasionally, God forbid, a bit of dry, and then we're back on raw. So I would say the top tip is realistic expectations about how much time and effort you're going to put into it, how much capacity you've got to give to it, because it's not. Some cats do it overnight, great, and they're like, the golden cats that I've had a client say to me, oh yeah, we put him on raw and he's been on it ever since, and I'm like, wow.
Happy ending.
Yeah, God, that's amazing. Gold star to you. But for me, like with all three of my cats, you know, we've had different experiences, and every cat is unique. Every cat is unique. So for me, it's about understanding, like, are you doing it because you think you should, or are you doing it because you want to? You know, what's your motivation behind it? And how much energy have you got to put into it? Because if you're going to try it for 1 meal or for 2 meals or for a week and then think, oh, it didn't work, you may not get very far, you know? And then the guilt and the shame and the frustration that comes from us humans will then you know, go into the cat. So my top tip is really about realistic expectations. Look at how much you can afford to spend on this, how much time you can involve with it, how many of the people in the house you've got to get involved. So is it just you that feeds the cats? Is it you and your partner? Is it you, your partner and your kids? Is it your housemate? You know, because when you bring in those changes or a change to a previous routine, you've got to have buy-in, you've got to have support. So for me, it's about realistic expectations.
And interestingly with that, because again, I think that's part of the cat crack generation from all of the processed foods and what they stick in there to make them really high flavor. You know, realistically, if you're giving a low processed food with none of that in, it's like the classic in England, the builders with 6 sugars in their tea. You know, you're never going to give them a cup of tea with no sugar in and expect them not to spit it back at you. You know, it's like you've got to wean them off, or you've got to even taint the unprocessed food with that cat crack. And I'm going to call that in the best way. I obviously don't mean that it's cocaine and heroin, but I do mean that it is really addictive, strong flavored additions to those foods. Otherwise they'd just be cardboard, you know, let's face it, you know, that processed stuff that's brown and slightly wooden looking,
or sometimes quite red,
slightly looking. Well,
or that's green, you know,
green vegetables.
Yes, vegetables.
Meat and veg, red and green. That's the one. Not that.
I mean, you know, cats use their sense of smell. So how do you get dehydrated, ultra processed, and dehydrated again, and ultra processed something to be smelly, to smell appealing to cats? You cover it with chemicals and sugars and flavorings and crappy stuff, you know.
Yeah, so I think, you know, Ella, you've raised an interesting thing. Would you put kittens straight onto raw? Yeah, I would. You know, I think that's a great age to really bring them on to that, you know, without any problems. I think, you know, as long as you've got a reliable source of raw, that you're not getting stuff that's looking slightly out of date on the yellow label aisle with green stuff on it and that horrible sort of metallic sheen of
where did you get the meat? Is that? Where did you buy the meat?
Do you know, in the UK, because there's this whole thing now about how can you keep your costs down, so all the supermarkets at the sell by day end thing, they start to stick yellow labels in the supermarket. So this is for you to eat, okay? And I go past and I take a little nosy at these things to think, you know, would I dare to, you know, put this on? And some of them you just think, because it's never how bad they've come out of the abattoir, it's often how badly they've been stored in the supermarket.
Yes, I've seen that. It's awful.
And I just look at that, and you just sort of like, you pick them up and you just sort of like hold them up to the light, because obviously the shelves are usually in a bit of dinginess, so you can't truly see what you're buying. And you know, that metallic sheen is just a bacterial sheen of, just don't want to know. Okay. And it looks, you know, that's one definitely not to buy it. But let's go away from that.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Conor thinks it's great to buy the yellow label stuff for dogs, and I'm just like, what are you on? But no, he likes to keep costs down. I think realistically, good source of raw, absolutely, I would start them from day dot. In fact, actually, my little Spider, who's the black cat I've shared within our group, she is weaned straight onto raw from me bottle feeding, because she came to me at a week old. And so, you know, we've done all of that, and because my dogs were eating raw, she sort of copied that. And in fact, actually, that's something I want to say to you guys. Somebody messaged me earlier in the week, you know, what if I run out of raw cat food? What can I use? And I'd just like to say, raw dog food is still rich in taurine, and that's really the main difference. And as long as you're not getting the added loads of veg options, you know, there is no reason why you can't shortcut and divide up raw dog food that's a meat only option for the week that you're short or whatever. Okay, so if you're into a raw shop and there's no cat food in there that week because they haven't got the order or whatever, buy some of the meat only dog range. You'll be fine. Okay. So going back to Cat Crack, you know, have you got any other toppers that you would add? I think that's the next top tip, is toppers that you would think would be great additions to raw to make them a little bit more flavorsome. Amaya, you've got to have a top tip on that.
Yes, I do. Well, first of all, I do several things, and actually not only the topper, but how you mix it is also important. Okay, what I use is brewer's yeast. That's one of my cat's favorite. But I usually, what I do, it's kind of analyze the behavior of the cat, right? So first of all, I look if the cat is addicted to more salty foods, more sweet foods, or, you know, so I keep trying different things before I decide which topper I'm going to use. Sometimes I use just a little bit of syrup, of a really good sourced syrup, and mix it so I make it sweet. And if the cat likes it, then I would choose something in the way of, brewer's yeast. It usually works. Any kind of vitamin B, which has this sweetie taste. So then I move forward to that. And if I try it with a little bit of salt, of course, everything, it's good quality salt, not just any salt. And then I put that. And if the cat likes it, then I will move to Parmesan cheese or any other topper. Also, I can use grounded kibble if the cat is too addicted to that. And I've tried also this kind of treats that are sweet. The liquid treats, right? Yeah. And I put that on top. And then how you mix it, because some people, what they told me about this putting the topper is that they eat the topper and then they don't eat the meat, right? So they like what you put on top. So what I usually do is I try to use big plates. I put a thin layer of meat, but very, very well expanded like that. And then I just put the topper and I press with the fork or whatever I have and make sure it gets in. And then I put a little bit on top again. So I
sneaky. Hide the broccoli. I like it.
Yes, I hide. So I tried different ways.
I'm now thinking of layer cake. You know, I just see this.
And then another one of meat. Then you can.
And then I slice it, and then they.
Isn't that opera cake?
And I serve it with clotted cream,
a quenelle on the side.
Yeah.
with a little bit of kefir on the side. Well, kefir is actually another one that I use when they like the taste of milk. But I don't use milk. I use kefir or any fermented kind of food. But anyway, that would be my three top toppers.
Oh, great. Okay, so Julianne, before I come back in, because I just talk too much, what's your favorite topper? Go on.
Interesting. I've never used any of those that Amaya's recommended, and I think it's great because now I've got tools that I can try as well. So we generally have so we've got three again. We use freeze-dried green-lipped mussels, and sometimes the boys like it, sometimes they don't. So, you know, we don't do it every day. I know some people say you should, but we don't. So we use that as one. We also use freeze-dried, what I call treats, but they're just pieces really. But they're not a balanced diet to feed 100% all of the time. So we have one of the boys likes salmon, one of the boys likes chicken, and they crumble really well. So we just sprinkle that on top. And yes, we have done the dry food. So, for example, with the heat and the weather last week, to try and get the boys to eat a little, we had some dry food and we sprinkled a couple on top. And it worked. You know, they ate the dry food, they ate the raw or wet underneath, because, you know, we've had a situation where we've been feeding all three to try and get something in them. So for toppers, I would say, look at what you're using already, you know, and use some of that, because we haven't talked about like the 2-plate method, mixing the food, you know, dry to wet to raw, you know, And those are elements.
It's coming.
I thought it might be. Those elements are important as well. So we've made great suggestions, but also think about what you're currently using, because to get your cat familiar with a new smell of a new food, a new texture of a new food, give them some familiarity. So look at what we've discussed, but also think about what you've already got. How about you, Brendan? What would you use?
Yeah, so I Lee, I love bone broth. Okay, so I think and I find it really useful in so many ways. There is now dried bone broths, and so it's sort of, you can just sprinkle it as dry on top, and sometimes that's enough.
You have to share that link with us.
Okay, there is also even making bone broth, and if you're going to go to that extent, adding a little bit of sea salt to the bone broth. Okay, not just apple cider vinegar, but sea salt towards the end. People worry, oh, my cat's going to have renal disease, if I give them too much salt. In the grand scheme of things, the amount of salt that you're giving in bone broth compared to what's already going to be in the other foods anyway is so small in the grand scheme of things. But the added flavor that brings, that attracts cats to it, or some cats, as you quite rightly say, Amaya, some are salt flavors, they love that very homeopathic approach to characters. Some even cats, you wouldn't think it, but actually those cats that are rare that love sweet, is out there. A lot of the cat crack stuff is actually really small amino acid additions to make them attractive, because cats have that taste attraction for things that are already easily assimilatable within their foods. So I think the glycine within the bone broth can be really useful. And the other options, rather than dried sprinkled on top, warm bone broth onto an ambient meat, I think is a great way forwards for those cats. Sometimes being super chilled, they're so sensitive to smell that food, as you quite rightly said, Julianne, that actually if it's a chilled food, there's just not the pungency there to hit their nose for them to be attracted. And warm bone broth onto that food just excites so much more within that I love adding bone broth in that sense. For those that are difficult to transition, right now my cat Swider would just, she sees the dog's bowls out and she'll be eating theirs before hers gets put out. She's like, that's Brilliant. Not fair. They've got bigger bowls. I'm going to have some of theirs too. So, I mean, she's so slim. You would not think that she can eat so much. I mean, she's on, I laugh because there's a company that I work with that sort of gives out an amount of food in a dish, and they say, yeah, you can divide that into 3 or 4 because it's easily going to work for in the fridge for that long. It'll stay good for that long, and that's then 3 or 4 meals and everything else. Well, you're lucky if you get 2 out of one of those for my cat. In fact, actually, that's probably about a day.
Yeah, so. I have to keep opening, small bags, and it's like, no, just give me the dog one. I don't care. Just fix it myself.
So one of the other interesting things that Jane Johnson's just said about dried sprats. So that was going to be my second sort of thing. So that I do find there's this chicken cat and fish cat. I think in practice I always ask the question, if I'm going to support them, which do they prefer at that? A little bit like the sweet and salty, I guess it is, but it is very much the chicken cat or the fish cat. There are some that are going to eat both, of course, but heaven forbid you try and give a chicken cat fish flavored stuff, and they're just like,
nope, walk away.
Yeah,
we have that.
I dealt with very, very addicted cats to fish, especially fish. And then when you want to switch, it's impossible, not even to fresh fish or whatever. You cannot take. So what I usually do when I have an addicted cat is I try to change it within the food they're eating. So if they're eating dry food, then I would go and try to add a bit of chicken or different, and maybe not chicken, maybe something very strange, like, I don't know, venison or whatever, something that as possible, as weird as possible. And then I'll try to add that into the fish. And what I will do also is make the most attractive food into a toy, into something that they have to play with. So they have the easy one. If they feel lazy, then they have to eat the venison with just a little bit of fish. And then if they want the kibble that it's fish, the one they really like, I try to take the one that put that one in a toy and make sure they play for it. So that actually helps me to slowly start changing diet into actually the flavor of the diet. And then I'll do the same with the canned food. I'll make it more difficult and then move very, very slowly, because cats are very addicted to fish. For me, it's even worse, cats addicted to fish than chicken. I don't know. What's your experience?
Wow.
So while I was away on holiday, my nurses were coming in to feed Spider, and they found the sprats, which were the treats for the dogs from a certain food company. And they literally were giving her them as treats. And so they'd feed her, she'd scoff the food down, and she'd sort of like do the, all the purring and everything
else. How does it go, Brendan?
Have you not done that? Anyway, so she'd do all of that, and they'd think, oh bless, So they'd get out, they found these sprats, and they gave her a few of those, and then they were getting a bit disturbed, because what they'd find, a little bit like mafiosa like, is the next day the fish heads would all be left. And so she'd just eat the body and leave the heads. Craziness. So that's my fish story as far as Spider's concerned. She's I don't think she likes the eyes looking at her. I don't know. She's all right with mice and birds because they close their eyes as she eats them.
Yeah. She doesn't like to be looked at.
So, but really good. So there's some good toppers for you guys out there. I love the sort of ground up muscle sort of powders and things like that. That brings some saltiness and some omega-3s and things like that into that mix, which is great. But I would say, Amaya, you've touched on another great point for attracting cats into eating, full stop. And that's, what you were saying about making it into a toy, making it into a something that provokes that hunt mechanism. Yes. Do you do anything else with that? Do you sort of do some other play before exposing them to food? Or anything like that?
The first thing I do, it's assess behavior in all, because sometimes it's simple. Because I don't always do the same thing with every single cat. As Julianne mentioned, every cat is unique. So first of all, I address behavior. I see if the cat is living among others, or maybe a dog or something, because that will only, living in a multi-cat household will just be enough for the cat that won't want to change food. Right, just because somebody's looking at him, just like you said with the fish. And but if you have just one cat or maybe two, and you want, first of all, I try to look for a place that it's safe for them. Maybe it's on a place that is higher. It depends. Not all cats like to jump to get their food. So I try to assess that and figure out what type of personality do I have, and then put some strategies on. So if I see that a cat it's lazy or maybe how do you say, this is kind of overweight cats that they're very attached to people, they're very attached to their food. Yeah, I usually do that. Try to stimulate this predation mechanism that they have, because and also I make the guardian to be committed to that and work, because the cat is only going to do things that are promoted by the guardian, and not do it just because they have the will. They are overweighted. They don't want to play, right? So what I do there is that I try to strengthen the bond between the two. Then try to play a little bit, and once the play is established, then I use the food to actually make a change. I don't make a change in the beginning. You know, clear?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Julianne, I'm going to let you have a go about that behavioural thing. We've talked before a little bit about that, and I think, you know, just I'd really like to hear on here what you think of, you know, how to get cats engaged with food, with behaviour, and then I'll come in. So go for it, Julianne.
Yeah, I think Amaya's right. You need to understand the drives of the cat to start with. You know, if there's any form of weight issue, you know, you need to instigate play before you even try to change or to bring in food. For me, you know, it's about using it to bringing in that curiosity element. So, you know, baby Max, he was on wet and dry from the rescue centre for 5 months. And, you know, when the person mentioned about feeding kittens as raw, I was like, I wish, you know, we would be able to do that. But we couldn't. So I started to bring in things for him to play with, to get used to the texture, the smell, the fun element of it. You know, a chicken wing tip and a quail's leg that he ate the whole bloody thing, including the foot. I'll never forget that. So it's about, you know, and like Amaya said, bring the guardian in as well, you know, because when we can get engaged with them, our energy makes a difference. So rather than thinking, eat the food because it's new, eat the food, you know, it's like, come on, let's have play with it. You know, is there bits that you can hide and put into treats and into treat
Can I
balls?
just pause you there for one moment?
Yeah.
Can I just say to all of the viewers out there, that's not that we're encouraging you to take the quail's leg and suck the bone and eat it whilst it's raw so that they're joining in. Okay, it's just that you've got to be part of that behavioural relaxation. Okay, carry on, Julianne.
Is that how that came across?
Just had a panic.
No. So I'm not talking like one leg for you, one leg for him. I mean, like, you know, goodness sake,
this is for you.
No. So I had a bit of kitchen roll, was holding onto the foot and, like, you know, playing with it, dangling so that he could kind of paw at it and things. It went nowhere near my mouth at all whatsoever.
This is not for vegans or
not for me. No, not for me. So thank you for clarifying. So bring in, that's my train of thought now.
Sorry.
What was the question? Right, yes. So bring in the play, the bonding element, bring in the curiosity element, and make it fun. You know, I'm very lucky with my boys. They tell me when they're hungry. You know, yes, we put a plate down. Max eats high. Leo just he wouldn't even entertain it. He's on the floor, you know, near somewhere where he can hide away. Sometimes he actually eats behind the sofa. You know, that's how we got him to eat in the heat wave. So it's about reading the cat and knowing what they're interested in. But like we've talked before about, you know, cubes of meat and things, it's all very new. So give it to them as fun and as play, and be curious yourself about what they'll do with it. You know, don't put it down and expect them to eat it straight away and get frustrated when they don't. You know, have a bit of meat, play with it with the cat, and, you know, enjoy that kind of this new chapter that you're going into. You know, approach it with that energy. I think is important as well. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree that, you know, getting a little bit of the prey drive, a little bit of hunting stuff going on physiologically works and gets their parasympathetics ready for digestion. And actually that drives them, their hunger. It makes them want to take that next step. You know, the smells and things like that then come into it following that exercise. And both of you have talked about, you know, the hiding away, that you know, the cats do not like to sit in the middle of a polished floor exposed to everything and people walking around them to eat. You know, I often say to people, look, you know, how many times do you read those books on the bookshelf? You know, they're there for show. Take half of them off, put a grippy covering on, maybe a carpet tile or something like that, onto the other half, and actually give them a shelf that they can perch on and be covered over effectively, looking out on things as to where to eat.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant suggestion, Brendan. I've never thought of that. That's a really great idea.
Yes.
You know, those are just those little things. And the water stuff, if your cats will probably reduce their amount of water intake when they're on raw, Just because they are desert creatures, they will absorb a lot of their moisture from their food, and they're not necessarily urinate loads. But if we're really concerned because they've got other problems, maybe renal disease, maybe issues with crystals, which we're going to cover in the future, then encouraging them to drink more, absolutely, but put that way away. I usually put it on a windowsill in a nice ceramic or other sort of glass dish, not plastic, and so that they can see the reflection on the surface. That's the meniscus that we see, we call that, and that gives them somewhere totally different to drink water. None of this dual bowls. Dual bowls are to give them a little bit of choice of different foods, different raw foods, etc. sometimes, but they're not for water in one half and food in the other. Okay, that's what that's not what.
And another thing now that you mentioned bowls is that please clean them, because I've seen I've like a few years
that's
ago,
what my dogs are for. Sorry.
A few years ago, I did cat sitting because, well, it was fun. And one of the things that I noticed is that the water bowl, it was never, it was refilled, but never washed. And it's important to wash it. It's important because then you have that slime of bacteria around. It's awful. So the cats are... the cats will hate it, and they won't drink water, and it's more frequent than you would think. Okay, so that's why I mention it, because it's not only the material that you use in the bowls, it's also washing them, because I'm assuming that if you're giving raw, you're already washing every single time you put a meal, but just in case.
Not only that, if you're putting them on the windowsill, okay, there's all sorts of pollutants that are going to get into that water. And if you're not replacing, just because the water bowl hasn't changed height, okay, doesn't mean that you just leave it there. There's all sorts of elements that are going to be dissolving into that from the environment, from, just day-to-day stuff. You want to be emptying that at least daily, okay, and just refilling it with new stuff. We will talk in the future about filtered or not. Let's talk about transitions. We're sort of going off topic here a little bit, but
I love the fact that Heidi said, "Sorry guys, but I'm not up for playing with stinky tripe mix to make it fun." I'm with you there, Heidi.
Well, I wasn't meaning drag it across your floor for the prey drive. No, we're not doing that.
So what about we've talked about toppers and sort of like placement. What about like how to do it? And I'm gonna MC for a little and throw this question to you first, Brendan, and then to Amaya. So like, if you decide, you've set your realistic expectation and you've got your bowls ready, you've got your placement ready, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to try this brand. Right, I'm good to go. Starting blocks. What would you do next, or what would you advise people do next, Brendan?
Look, so if there's a lot of debate about sudden transition and just relax. If they don't eat it, don't worry, just keep a small amount available. Make sure it's in their standard bowl. We've talked about all the behavioral stuff already, and just put it in that place. And if they don't eat it, over the couple of hours of dusk and dawn, we've talked about dusk and dawn before, I would literally then just be, either throwing it away, getting out the next spoonful for the next time, and just doing a hard, look, you're not going to starve yourself. You will be encouraged. I think that's all very well for me as a clinician to prescribe to people. But I know for an absolute fact, and we touched on it right at the beginning of this, that we all get really stressed when our cats don't eat. And so I do say to people, if they've been on an old food, that I have no issue if they want to mix through that food into the new. I don't tend to do a half and half choice or anything like that. Although some people do use those bowls, those dual bowls, to do that. So they'll sort of add a little bit of the new stuff next to the old, just to sort of like try and fool the cats into thinking it's all one thing. I absolutely think that actually mixing it through is the way to do it if you're going to use an old food, especially with some of these sort of in jelly sachet foods and things like that. Mashing those up and mixing it through some raw is an option. And it just fools the cats into, no, I know that smell, and that's really an overpowering smell compared to the raw. I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amaya, what's your sort of select choice for mixing them across?
First of all, I put the Eye of the Tiger soundtrack just to keep myself inspired. I'm just kidding.
If I'd have known that, I'd have got that ready and primed, so we could have played that.
Right, I'm gonna look that up quickly.
You've got to get that.
get the soundtrack.
That's now
on
our
by
group
the
theme.
podcast.
Theme track. Every time we start RPM Cats, we've got to start with our tune.
You wait till next month.
So once you're inspired to do that, then what I do is, well, let's say you remove kibble and you're in the wet zone with wet food and you're trying to get into raw. I actually agree with you. I try to mix it, and I try with very small amount of the new food and mix it and try to use that jelly kind of thing, which it's I think it's tapioca starch. I don't know if that's tapioca. It's the name you call it in English. So I know that if it's that, I'll try to put that on the mix, and I'll start adding a little bit more every single time. Once they get adapted to eating that, because there are some cats that even if you put just a single small amount, they will just put it away. Okay, so if that doesn't work, the other thing that I do is that I expose it. I just put, not into different bowls, but I put a smaller amount of food of the old one and just a small, like really close to the border of the bowl, just like laying there, and I just leave it there because they are going to feel hungry after they ate whatever they actually liked. And then sometimes I got the they actually took the other new food because it was, oh, this wasn't enough, so I'm just gonna take the other one. And I did this, for example, with my cat because a brand here actually had made raw, already made raw, but now they decided to make wet food based on raw, and which is very high quality, and my cat didn't like anything. So I said, let's have this just in case, you know, I forget to buy raw, it's not enough. And I started trying them, and I just mixed it, and my cat hated it. It's like, what are you doing? This is my raw, and you're mixing it with this. What is that thing around, right? So I did this the other way around, just put it a little bit near the bowl, separated from the raw food, and he actually ate it, and now he loves it. So after I tried several times, one over and over again, this actually worked. But usually I would go for your tip and mix it all and start slowly and use the toppers and, you know, relax with the music that I just suggested.
How about you? Yeah. And how do you go, Julianne? Come on, what's yours?
Oh, I'm different to you two, I have to say. So I'm slower, and we started off with the 2-plate method. So a plate down of the normal food, plate down of a little bit of the new food for a couple of meals. And actually what I do is I do that every other meal for like 2 or 3 days. So it's not every single meal, because I've had one of my cats has been very, very sensitive, like very sensitive. The 2 plates went down, walked away, wouldn't come back to his normal food for hours. So, you know, I probably, and this is again probably the extreme, I appreciate that, but we've gone really slow. So we've done 2 plates for every other meal, just side by side. And again, there are the odd times, like Amaya said, the cat will go to sniff it, maybe lick at it. And then I migrate it onto the same plate. So, but again, I'm probably looking at like 2 weeks after we've started to introduce a new food. You know, I am risk averse, like in my life. So I will do things very slow because I want to take my time. I want it to work, you know. And we've had instances with the cats before where, you know, they've not eaten for 5 days, ended up at the vets and things. So I have, you know, probably trauma there around transitioning food. So we do it very slow. So we would then go to the 1 plate, and I don't mix it in until they you know, if for example with Leo, until he's clearing his old food and the new stuff's there, you know, and then I will start to mix it in, because again, we've had instances where mix it in, they walk away, mix it in, they walk away, and I'm like, I've got to get food in this cat, you know. So for me, it is much slower, but that's based on my experience, you know, and the cats that we've had. I've never really had a cat that's been very food driven, because I think if a cat is food driven, you may have a much more much easier transition to shift dry to wet, wet to raw, whatever, you know, whereas my cats haven't been. They've all been very cautious type cats, you know. Even with baby Max, he's very friendly, he's very cuddly, he's very social, but when it comes to food, you know, it, like I said, it's taken us, we started in February, and it's, you know, we're August and we're still between the three. You know, we've had weeks when we've had him fully on raw, and I know a couple of people, which I'm hopeful we'll get time to address, mentioned that they did really well. The cat's on raw for a few weeks, then they stop eating it, you know, and we've had to kind of almost, in my opinion, take a back step, in my view. But we're much slower in our house, and that's how I advise my clients. So when one says to me, "Oh, we put raw food down the next morning," and he's eaten it ever since, like, it rocks my world, because I've never had that or done that ever.
I had a cat that actually took 6 months to change, to switch food, and it was kind of your experience. I had to, you know, take a step back, but what I tried to do is not to you know, overwhelm guardians, because sometimes if I see that they're very, very addictive, I would go to your method and go slowly. Or if I see that they're very that they would like to do it very slowly, they are not in a rush or anything, I would probably use some of your methods that you mentioned. But if I see that someone is very anxious, or I don't know, usually I look at the human, not the cat.
I was going to say, you can say I'm a bit controlling. That's okay. I know I'm a bit freaky outy. That's okay.
So I take a look at the human, and then I decide what method I'm going to use. And then if I see that there has to be behavior work before actually switching foods, that's what I would do first. Yeah. And then I always tell them, don't be afraid to take a step back.
Yeah.
Because if you get too stressful and you're like, oh my God, he's not eating, or you're driving yourself crazy, you're not gonna get there, because your cats need to feel safe, as you mentioned before, Brendan. You cannot put them exposed in the middle of somewhere. They need to feel safe, and safety also comes from the human. If the human feels so stressed, that some cats are going to say, what's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?
Politely put. Yeah.
So
please don't stare at me like that. Yeah, it's like
I'm not watching.
What are you doing?
Yeah, totally. And I own that completely, right? Totally own that, you know. And that's why, like, you know, that's why I'm being completely honest. Like, for some people it happens really quickly, others not so much. And I completely agree with you, Maya. The humans have a big role to play in it, very, very much so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that thing of, I have got owners that will literally sit there and stare at their cats, whilst, you know,
not quite that bad.
willing them to eat, and I'm just like, no, please do not. You know, this is the beauty of dawn and dusk. You know, dusk, you just put it there. It's nighttime. You know, worst case scenario, it's going to be slightly dried in the morning. Go to bed. Let the cats do what they want to do, and if they, you know, if they eat it, brilliant. If they don't, throw it in the bin. You know, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, new day.
So can we touch? I think we need to. We're already 50 minutes in. Wow. Can we touch on this whole thing about Neophilic versus the ones which are just set in their ways? So the ones that just constantly changing the foods that they want to have. And Beth B, you know, this sort of deals with where you're at with this, you know, constantly rotating proteins and wondering how many proteins you have to throw away before they're going to eat. What have you come across with that, you know, that Neophilic cat scenario? Do you find that a lot? Do you find that actually it's more the other way, that it's the stubborn cat that really is not going to want to change what they eat? And how do you address that with transition?
Well, I found that Neophilic cats are mostly, it's a behavioral issue that you will find that they're picky in other ways in their lives. And they're afraid of changing, and they're afraid of changes. And most of the time, what I try to tell people is that it's okay to be aware that they don't like change. But after working in an animal protection services, what I notice is that cats actually like change. The problem is that they don't like the change that does not benefit them. You know, if you do something that actually will bother their inner peace, then that's not a good change. But if you make changes that actually are good for them, they are open to change. So I found that's the same thing. That's my experience with cats that are really, really picky, that, or maybe you just put chicken and they will only eat chicken because that's what they like and whatever. Most of the time I found out that there are other pickiness around in the house. And I try first to address that. I use a lot of self-selection. And then I decide to change food. Actually, food is kind of the last thing I change every time I find I find myself like struggling with transition. I try to look anywhere else to see where the problem is, and then make an adjustment in food, because food, it has to, for me, it's related to safety. They need to feel safe, and if they don't feel safe, Neophilic, if their cat already has this Neophilic sense, then this will be increased. But if the cat is open and learns how to adapt better, which that it's different in every cat, of course, then I will find other strategies for transition. So that would be my experience. I haven't encountered myself with many Neophilic cats. Impossible ones.
Okay. And for you, Julianne?
Oh, I don't know if you can hear. I got Leo yowling at the bottom of the stairs.
Mom, have you finished yet?
Yeah. What are you talking about me? What was the question? I'm distracted now by the cat behind me.
It's about how you address those Neophilic cats versus the ones that are set in their ways. Are you prone to sort of constantly changing foods when you give out advice, or are you how do you stop people wasting so much if they're doing that constantly?
Yeah, so again, like Amaya said, you look at the cat and is it showing up in other areas? I would, my experience myself, and I've suggested to clients, when you buy frozen food, like raw food and things, it's very rare you could buy a box, or like a tray. You've got to buy a minimum of like 5 kilograms or 20 sachets or whatever it is. So, you invariably have some in the freezer at some point. So, we used to feed Pickle the same protein all the time because I thought that was the right thing to do. Now I've learned that, you want to vary the protein. So I now see it actually as a good thing that they will, be what we call picky. I think it's about our reframing. They're sharing that they're ready for the next protein. They need whatever components, beef has over chicken or chicken has over venison, or, whatever it may be. Maybe they need a slightly fattier meat. Maybe they need a slightly leaner meat. I try to change my perspective about it rather than, looking at the cat and thinking they're picky, they're bad, they're frustrating me. It's like, well, actually, what am I viewing about this? The best way to not waste raw cat food is I completely agree. Totally agree with that, Marta. We've had situations where Max hasn't eaten a plate, so I've put it down for Leo, and Leo's eaten. I'm like, yes, score, a plate not wasted. But equally, like, when you are transitioning, and in fact, even if you have a cat, there will be plates that you will need to ditch. There will be meals that they won't eat that, like Amaya said, you've had down for too long, or it's been put in this maybe just slightly grubby bowl or whatever. There are times when us humans cook something and it doesn't taste how you think it's going to, and you probably have a couple of spoonfuls and think, oh God, I can't eat that. I remember making a paella and putting so much chili in it, we couldn't even have a second mouthful. So, I think that's about our perspective and what we're projecting onto the cat around that. I think it's good to try and involve a variety of proteins. Make sure you've got space in the freezer. We had to get a second freezer that's outside for all our cat food because we've got different brands, because they've got different qualities and components to them, which is part of trying to give a balanced diet.
Yeah. And I think, roll on that people realizing if your cat is stable and eating that minced chicken food, over and over again, and you think that you're doing it right, I would absolutely implore you to have a little bit of variety in there, because that single source, or that continual feeding the same thing over and over again, is the reason deficiencies and excesses happen in dietary problems. Because if you give variety, then actually the body has the opportunity to absorb different nutrients at different rates from those other foods. If you just give the one thing over and over again, that's when you're at risk of those deficiencies creeping in. And that's probably one of the big concerns over balance that many vets have with patients. But that actually reflects for the processed foods. Exactly the same things are a concern, that if you're feeding one processed food over and over again, you are at high risk of a poor diet because of a balance issue. Okay, even though they say they're complete and balanced, there is still a risk.
You're just setting yourself up, aren't you? You know, for intolerances and immune issues, and actually, like, you know, it's like I said, I learned the hard way, but it is important to feed a varied diet. So if your cat won't eat chicken the next day, or they've gone off the food, great. See it as an opportunity. What can I try with you next? Rather than, for goodness sake, why wouldn't you eat that?
And also, for example, in my case, as I mentioned in the beginning, that for example, lamb is not a meat that they want now. My cats usually get 5 different proteins along the month, right? I shop just once a month, and I put everything in the freezer, and I try to have 4. 3 of them are basic, are always there. Their favorite, it's rabbit, but then they will have some chicken, some turkey, some beef, and some lamb. Well, I said 5 then. And then when lamb came around, lamb in the summer wasn't a choice. I started using others. I bought another one and tried it out, and well, it didn't come as expected, but anyway, I'll keep trying. So every single time I just buy a little amount of a new one. I keep trying in small amounts, and add it up and say, okay, do you like it or not? And just like that, if I very patient, sometimes that meat actually stays. For example, the one that I used was wild. I think it's venison, but I'm not sure. Which that's the one I use. Or duck, for example. Duck also, they don't usually like it. A cat is going to get across here. Here you go.
Oh, don't try and trump me.
There we go.
On camera.
Hello.
What you've done now, he's gone. Leah's never on camera.
I don't care. I eat everything you put on a plate. I don't care.
Totally stole my thunder there.
So all we're waiting for is a raw food company that starts to rear little mice and chicks, and that's all they put in their entirety. So they've just got 2 flavors that they just keep swapping between.
And please, not in a disgusting way, because for what I've seen so far is like they're all whole mice. And I tell people it's really good for fiber, and they're like, yeah, no way, I'm not
with a little ear stuck out of one corner of the cube.
And they're like, no, I'm not buying that. That's disgusting. So just all brands over there, just listen to that.
Oh, look, Kaiser Brink has mice mince. Marvelous. I love it.
Yeah, they do whole chicks and things as well. They do amazing.
Do they?
Actually.
There you go.
No, I haven't.
Can imagine. Yeah, I wonder which lab they're reared in. It's like some genetic freaks or something. Just like.
Oh, you just made it worse.
Look, that's been a wonderful session, guys. Lots of tips for loads of people to try transitioning, and good luck for you guys out there if you are struggling. I'm sure lots more support we can give you over the coming months. We've got some further dates in the diary already. These guys have properly organized me to make sure that there's dates in my diary. And I'm
the OCD one, like I said, like low risk, high organized, like let's get the dates in, people, come on, we've got to show up for everybody. I'm an organizer, I admit it.
Yeah,
thank God.
We're always open to more people to put in lots more different suggestions of what they want us to talk about. I think there's loads of things. There's renal disease we've got to touch on. That's a big one. I think we're going to bring in because loads of people panic when their cats have kidney disease, and they're scared to feed raw, and actually I'd encourage them to. So yeah, we can touch on that and how we address that in the coming months. But so many other projects are on crystals and crystal urine. There's all sorts of things. Hypothyroidism we can touch on. So we're going to be dealing with those sort of things going forwards. But if you've got any specific sort of nutritional questions, stuff about balance, bone material levels, somebody mentioned earlier, we can deal with that too. So look forward to seeing you guys soon.
I have to say, Brendan, when you said that there's a topic about crystals, my first thought was like amethyst and citrine. Oh, we're going to do crystals. No.
Well, if you go off and start talking about that, that's absolutely your bag. You can do that, no problem whatsoever. I'll have my rose quartz on the shelf up here.
Urinary crystals, right? Okay, I get
yeah.
Got it.
I think everybody watching will be perfectly happy with you going through healing crystals.
Yes.
You're absolutely fine with that. So look, guys, we've done a really good stint here, and thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Amaya, all the way from Madrid, in the burning heat, I'm sure.
And I managed to stay.
Yes.
Yeah. And the police didn't drag you off.
Yes.
We only heard one siren. It was fine. And Julianne, thank you again so much. Cats naturally cats. I can never remember which way naturally cats, get the right way around. Slap myself later.
And thank you to Brendan for being our awesome host as well.
Oh yeah, well, it's great to have some feline friends. It really is. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of our wonderful audience and all of your comments. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.